everybody. Welcome to Rachel's Reviews, and this is our next episode of the Female Film Critics Speak Out panel. This is our eighth or ninth episode, which is pretty crazy and very exciting. And this is a chance where I get to talk to some of my other fellow female film critics, bloggers, panelists, YouTubers, all that kind of fun stuff. And I'm really excited today to talk with two of my fellow female podcasters, Lady Pod Squad here today. And I'm really thrilled to be able to do that. I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and Rosa Parr is here.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, and Hannah is here.
Hi.
Yes. And so thank you so much both for coming on. And I'd like to give you both a chance to kind of introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about what you do and what content you create in this crazy space that we're all in. And so why don't you start with Rosa?
Yes. So again, hello, everybody. I am Rosa from Rosa's Reviews. I am co-founder, co-host of the Latinx Lens podcast, and I'm also assistant editor of In Their Own League podcast and website. So yeah, just film critic, I guess, female film critic here. And Rachel, thank you. Thank you so much for the invite.
Very much. Thank you for coming. And Rosa has been on my Criterion Project twice, podcast. So that's been really fun to get to talk with her about Criterion films. And so Hannah, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Hi, my name's Hannah, and I'm a co-host of Cinemania World podcast, and we talk about movies or movies, news, just about anything you can think of over there. And I'm a frequent film Twitter user. And yeah, I'm so excited to be on with you guys. You guys are two of my favorite people on Twitter.
Oh, thank you. I take that as a high compliment because Twitter is dangerous.
Twitter is dangerous.
It is, yes.
We're going to talk about that. But Hannah, so how did you get involved in the podcast? Did you just get invited to join? How did they find out about you?
So I first started watching movies in 2016. So I was very late to finding out my passion basically. And I was on film Twitter around then and just kind of talked to, random people on there or whatever. And everyone knows that I really love Call Me by Your Name. It's my favorite movie of all time. So I was invited on Cinemania one day for their Pride review of Call Me by Your Name. And I was like, sure, whatever. And it was my first time ever doing any sort of YouTube video or podcast, any sort of that kind of thing, right? And I was very nervous, and I did the podcast, and I guess I was good because they invited me back after that. And then I just really clicked with the founder of the podcast, my friend Dwayne, and he's my best friend. So now I am a co-host on the podcast and very involved with it. And it's the thing that I'm most proud of ever. So yeah.
That's great. That's great. Was Larry on that episode of
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me because that's his favorite movie.
Yeah.
So with Rosa, for you, you have been going to film school, is that right?
Yeah, so I'm still currently working on my film degree, yes.
You're incredible. Amazing. I don't know how you do all you do. But so you were going to film school, and what inspired you to start film school?
Yeah, so the film that got me into possibly doing film criticism and doing it on a more consistent manner, it was Wonder Woman. So I haven't been doing this for long, obviously. So yeah, it was Wonder Woman. It's the movie that put me into it, and I was just hearing a lot of people talking about it and hearing how it was such a big deal because it was female directed, first ever live action female superhero, and why it was such a big deal. And it was at that moment when I realized that since I'm not a cinephile, I'm not well-rounded with film history and so on, I decided to just go for it and work on my film degree, just to build a foundation and have something to lean back on, and also have that context when it comes to and that insight when it comes to reviewing films. And therefore I won't be too lost when a lot of people are talking about these older films or people who were very important in film history, and how that influenced to what we're currently watching now. So yeah, I'm still working on it. I'm beginning to get the little interest in doing a movie myself, but for the moment, yeah, it was Wonder Woman. And now that I wanted to take this more serious and have more credibility, so to speak, in my worldview, I decided to just go ahead and work on my degree.
That's great. And Hannah, you guys focused a lot on box office, I think, at the beginning, right, of
Mhm.
your podcast. And
I was never involved in the box office stuff.
okay, I know Larry was.
Yeah, Larry and Dwayne have their box office show.
Okay, because I was wondering how they kind of had to pivot with 2020
Mm.
in
Yeah,
kind of covering different topics, and is that
I know.
challenging?
Yeah, I know it was hard for them, and it was definitely hard for me and Dwayne too, because on our live show we usually talk news. That's kind of our thing on there. And with 2020, it was like there's no real like movie like news. It was more just, hey, this got
Delays.
delayed again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can only say so much about like delays after a while, and kind of have that same discussion over again. So
No.
it was difficult to try and find footing, but I think it definitely like solidified our show a little bit more, because me and Dwayne during that time we found more of kind of like we developed more chemistry, I think, because our show is very much like banter based and stuff like that. It's more of a conversation than just kind of like going through like news points and stuff like that. Like I said before, we're like best friends, so I think that was the time when we really got close.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was great, even though 2020 sucked for a lot of other reasons, but for Sin Mania, it was a really good time to kind of find our place in the podcast world.
Yeah, it was an interesting year for Hallmark's podcast as well, because it was one of the only Christmas movies were one of the only things that were just going forward full steam ahead. I feel like I was the only one that was super busy. And watching, I watched 115 Christmas movies new in
Oh my God.
2020
Oh
and
my.
reviewed. Yeah, it
I
was
watched
intense.
less new releases than that.
It's intense.
Oh wow.
But yeah, so Rosa, so you started with the In Their League group,
Right, right,
and you're still with them, and
right.
that so was that your first kind of podcasting experience?
No, my first podcasting experience was actually with the Next Best Picture with Matt Neglia.
Oh,
Yeah, what happened was that I mean, you're a member of the OAFFC as
yeah.
well, so which is where I found a lot of you guys from, and I think that that platform, being part of that film critic circle, kind of put me up in a little pedestal, so to speak, and made me visible to other people. So yeah, it just randomly one day, for there's obvious reasons. I mean, I live in LA, and I just really close to Hollywood, so I get the advantage of going to some, well, I used to, not anymore. We're all locked down, but at the time I would get to the early releases, or the ones that had limited release films. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I just get a message from Matt one day, and he asks me if I had watched Late Night, from where Mindy Kaling was in it, and
Mm-hmm.
Emma Thompson, I think. And he told me if I'd seen it, if I'd be a guest in his podcast, because he wanted to have that female perspective on the film. So I did. I just jumped on it. I was like, you know what, let's do it. No experience, nothing at all. And he gave me my first shot. As soon as that podcast episode ended, I knew that's what I wanted to do. So I was like, yes, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I want to do. And ever since, I just thank them for that opportunity that not anybody would have done, particularly with someone with so little experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Matt Neglia. I mean, he puts my 115 Christmas movies to shame. I mean,
Oh my
holy
God, that
cow!
man.
The man
He
is a movie
watches
watching
everything.
machine.
Yeah. Yes.
He watched like something like 50 movies at Sundance
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
in
God.
6 days. I'm just like, oh my gosh.
I watched
Yeah.
3.
I felt like I watched 27 in about, I mean, I was so exhausted
Yeah.
from it. So he's unbelievable. I mean, he even did that in the live, like in 2020 Sundance. He
Mm-hmm.
watched something like 50 movies. It's just unbelievable. The man is incredible. But so you were then on in the league, and
Mm-hmm.
then you started Latinx. And how did that
Right.
start?
Yeah, so Latinx Lens starts from a class, a film class I was taking, which is race and gender in American film. So week 4, we're going to learn about Native Americans, Asian Americans, and Hispanics or Latinos in film history and our
In 1 week?
contributions in 1 week. That should have been the first red flag, right? 3 different demographics in 1 week. And yeah, our representation and contribution to film history, which is a little bit over 100 years, uh, as well as television to top it off. So yeah,
Oh, wow.
utilizing a 500-page textbook and was just disappointed to read a page and a half just on Latinos and everything that we've done and we contributed. So yeah, out of that disappointment, I just came up with the idea of just do a Latinx lens, highlight either direct actor. Right now we're doing directors and actors, and we alternate. We just showcase. We select an actor or a director and then 3 films and what they've done and how they contributed to Hollywood. But we
Hmm.
also review films, not only Latinx centric are created, but also any random films, because I don't also think we should be boxed to just review Latinx
Hmm.
movies. So yeah, just from that film class just disappointed me, and now Latinx is existence
Hmm.
because of it. So yeah.
That's great. So Hannah, when you're planning out the podcast with Dwayne, do you what kind of I guess what kind of suggestions do you feel like you make that maybe he would never thought of, that you kind of encourage them to cover?
Definitely more like the indie, like female directed films. Like whenever I hear like news and stuff about that, I always make sure to kind of bring it up, because those movies are the ones that usually get me the most excited sometimes. And I feel like the news for them or something like that kind of fly under the radar. Or if I do like watch like a female directed film or a female led film, that kind of flew under the radar, I do like to bring it up in the podcast during our like first segment when we talk about like things that we've watched recently. And yeah, I love having like being able to kind of with Dwayne, like he's very like educated and very on top of things with like a female voice in the film community. But it's definitely nice to have somebody to bounce off of and kind of like even take that conversation further with, and kind of bring a different perspective to the podcast in a way, because we do have other girls on the podcast, but we don't have as many as we do males on the podcast.
Yeah,
So it's nice to kind of have that time.
that's great. Yeah, so I always ask on this show that what do you think that females' voices, female critics add to the critic landscape? Do you feel like, well, it's just the same, whoever's reviewing a movie, it doesn't matter? Or do you think that it really is important to have the female voices in when you're reading criticism, that you need to have a mixture? What do you think, Rosa, as far as when you read a review, do you think it makes a difference?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The male gaze is certainly something out there, and unfortunately, Hannah probably knows more about that than me. But it's yeah, the female gaze, female lens is something that we bring to the table, and on top of that, our own experiences and how we interpret films and stories and so on, and whatever we can relate to. It's gonna vary from person to person, but the way we view the world, or the way we, and when I mean we, I mean women, it's different. At the end of the day, we do live in a very patriarchal society, a misogynistic society, and it's something that men have never. All they've done this whole time is benefit from it.
Hmm.
So our lens certainly is something that it's much needed. And I do think we bring something new to the table.
Well, and also I feel like that obviously anybody can review anything, of course,
Right.
and
Right.
all opinions are valid, of course.
Right.
But I do think that, especially when you have content that I feel like at least is specifically kind of made and designed for women, I
Mhm.
think it's helpful to have women's voices saying, is this effective? And I felt that way about Bridgerton recently, that to me, it was so obviously made for women. Again, that doesn't mean that men can't review it, doesn't mean they can't have an opinion on it. I totally get that. But just even in the way that the film was shot, particularly the steamier kind of sections of the film, I felt were really done in a way that was meant to sort of please women. And so to I was joking on Twitter, and of course people freaked out, but I was joking that it almost seems sort of ridiculous for men to review the show. It seems so made for women. And so I think that that it's really important that if the studios are going to put out content that has a female demographic associated with it, it's important that we have female film critics who are going to say, or I think that's really important. I don't know. What do you think, Hannah?
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's like you just said, no one should be able to not have an opinion on something. But I think with conversations around movies like Birds of Prey, like Captain Marvel, it's like a lot of the men who reviewed it didn't enjoy it as much as women, and they said it didn't really affect me the way I hoped it would or leave an impression on me. And it's like it's very obvious as to why, I think, a lot of the time. And it's like, you're not a girl. That's what the demographic is for women.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not gonna like affect them or resonate with them the same way that it will with like, female critics or just, audience members. So yeah, I agree with you 100% with sometimes it's a bit ridiculous that with like movies or TV shows that are so obviously aimed at women that,
Mm-hmm.
men try and tear down a little bit.
Yeah, and it's one of the thing I dislike the most is these YouTube channels where that's all they do is kind of comment on either stuff that's designed for children or stuff that's designed for women, and be like, oh, we actually watched and we actually watched a Barbie movie, or we actually watched Descendants, and like I mean, I feel bad for particularly young women these days because anything that they like is immediately deemed as being stupid
Yeah.
and worthless. And it kind of makes me sad. Like anything that's a decom. That's why I try to kind of review Barbie movies, review decoms, review things like that maybe other channels don't review. Because I just feel like somebody needs to be kind of out there giving some kind of critical analysis to this stuff and saying, because some of it is bad and some of it's not well done. But I just feel like sometimes people are so hard on anything that is particularly tailored to like for girls between like 10 to 14-ish kind of age. They're extremely tough, I think, on that. I mean, you must see that as a mom, Rosa.
Yes, and it's very it gets tougher and harder, especially in the type of society we live in at the moment, with like TikTok and so on
Yeah.
and so forth. And you have this, yeah, it can be really tough. I know what you mean.
Well, and especially, I never thought about it before, but the other day someone was saying that like teenagers have to constantly worry about having their picture taken all the time. And that had never, I don't know why, it just never really occurred to me that how stressful that would be. That literally every minute you have to worry about being videotaped, being put on social media. I mean, that must be really hard. I mean, you're younger than us, Hannah. That must have been something that you dealt with.
Yeah, definitely. In high school. In high school, it was very weird to kind of go to like lunch every day and like just anywhere in the school really, because when you go to high school, you usually have like everyone in your high school or a good amount of people in your high school on like your social medias and stuff like that. So I'd see like that other people in my school like taking pictures of people who didn't know that they, were going to be on their Snapchats or like anything like that, and kind of like poking fun at them. So I'd see it happen to other people and then be like,
Yeah.
well, are they doing that to me? So it's definitely stressful and kind of just makes you feel more self-aware and just not
Yeah.
comfortable in a place that you should be comfortable. It's
Yeah, I was watching the movie The Duff a while back. I don't know if you saw that, but in there she gets pretty seriously socially media shamed,
Mm.
and the attitude of the movie and the characters in the movie were kind of like, just brush it off. It happens to everybody. That was something that, like, from my perspective, growing up in the '90s, I would have been like, oh my gosh, I'm devastated. And they were just very. And so I asked my sister, who's 18 years. I have a sister that's 18 years younger than me, and I asked her, and she was like, "Oh yeah, it happens. We all get it." I'm like, "Oh wow, that's crazy."
It happens a lot, but it's not easy to just kind of like forget about it or
Yeah.
just not be conscious about it.
Yeah, well, see, that's what I want to talk about, because both of you have, when we all have experienced trolling, but I feel like both of you have experienced, along with me, some pretty hardcore trolling, and people always just brush it off, just ignore it, and for some reason, I really struggle with that, and it's something I'm really working on, but it still stings. That just yesterday, somebody they ended up getting suspended from Twitter. This account was just all over everybody, calling people fat sloths and calling people horrible names and Nazis, and saying it was just, and then of course they got suspended from Twitter. But and I'm like, that shouldn't affect me. This is, who cares about this loser? But it's still, when I saw those things, there was still a side of me that was like, oh, it's just, I don't know, it's still hard for me to
Yeah.
read that stuff, and just to know that that's there, and it's just so awful. And I hate it. And it is not my strength. It's dealing with trolls. But I've been so grateful to have this show every month to kind of buoy me up. But so let's start with what happened with you, Hannah. So you had said something about, you got backlash about you saying something was sexist or something like that. What was the problem?
Okay, so you know, everyone who's on film Twitter knows that there's videos that rolls around of other kind of content creators who
Yes.
definitely are ignorant. And those kind of roll around on Twitter and everyone has an opinion on them, whatever. I saw one day and it was basically insinuating that Zendaya in Spider-Man Homecoming and Far From Home wasn't sexed up enough, that she wasn't sexy enough, whatever. And I was like, she's 16 in the movies. So I shared it on Twitter and I said that it's disgusting that they even kind of insinuated that she's 16. And my tweet got like some likes or whatever, and I guess it made it back to the person who was in the video saying those things, and they went back on their YouTube channel and addressed me again, me in particular, not again, but they addressed me, and they said like, oh, thanks for trying to like me too us, and like things along those lines. And then I didn't know that this was being said about me. Because I don't watch his channel. I don't care. So I had someone DM me actually and say, hey, I don't know if you know or not, but this content creator just called you out basically on his live stream. And I was like, okay. So I watched it and I screen recorded it and I put it back on Twitter because I knew that he would see it. And I don't like being walked all over. So I I posted it and I said, hey, you don't even know what Me Too means, obviously. So I'd suggest you stop throwing it around, and you're literally attacking a 20-year-old on film Twitter for saying something that you said was ignorant. And I guess that made it back to him also. And I didn't think about it. I didn't, nothing. And so that same person DM'd me and said, hey, the guy talked about you again, but addressed you directly this time, saying your name. And this is a content creator that has, you know, a good amount of subscribers and like views and stuff too, by the way. So it's not like nobody was like seeing what was going on.
Right.
And he said, Hannah, I'd take you out on a date, obviously, because you watch me so much. Just like some weird like things. And so I put it on Twitter and I said, it's getting weird. You're being weird. I'm 20, leave me alone. You're like 40. Just admit that you said something gross and let's move on. And he did not. He this time, a lot of my friends on Twitter were sticking up for me, and he replied to my tweet and was like, hey, can we talk about this in DMs? And he DM'd me and I said I would like an apology, and he said, you're making demands. I said no, it's expectations, and then he just left it at that. and a lot of his fans started coming after me. And a few of them called me a whore in their Discord. A lot of them were just saying that I was making it up and that I was being like a baby and like over exaggerating and stuff like that. So that was not
The
fun.
worst. That's
Yeah.
the worst.
It was everywhere on Twitter too. It was like it was very stressful, like getting like, because I had so much like overwhelming love from both of you too. You both were sending me so much love, but just having so many people like see the post and interact with it, and like some people who were very angry at me for even, you know, calling this person out, very anxiety inducing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can relate because I had the F Marvel tards send their goons after me and say that they wanted me to never review another film on Rotten Tomatoes ever again, and to get me off of YouTube. And it was right after that that I got the death threats and the insane people coming after me. And I think I hold those people that rile up their content base, I hold them more accountable for what they do, more than even the people that actually make the threats and are the idiots, because the content creators know better. They know what they're doing, and they're doing it to make money because it increases their ratings, increases their group sizes, increases their platforms, and they don't, you know, I don't know, maybe they do think about the people behind the threats and and maybe they don't care. I don't know. I like to think, well, they just don't think about it. They don't think the person behind the screen. But you know, and obviously as a critic and as a podcaster, we expect a certain degree of criticism of what we do. Of course, that's going to happen. But when it gets into those personal attacks, those just when it becomes cruel and mean, and it's tough. It's really tough,
Especially when it's something like as just easy as movies, you know. Talking about movies should never kind of rail into personal attacks. It just seems like such like, and when you think about it, it seems so silly, but when it's happening, it definitely seems very real and just like not good.
Yeah, I'm glad it calmed down. I mean, that's one thing with these idiots is that it tends to be really intense, like a fire, and then they lose interest and move on to somebody else.
I thought it would, but then the other day, I also posted this
Oh,
on
what?
Twitter. The other day there was an announcement account on Letterboxd. It was an account that was made up and it had nothing on it or anything like that. It was obviously made the same day that they made the comments on I have a list on Letterboxd of my favorite movies, and this person was like, oh, no female directed films, you're sexist, and just going in on me and calling me like ugly, and like
I think I saw those tweets.
Yeah, I wear too much makeup and like a whole bunch of nasty, disgusting things. And then I think I blocked them on Letterboxd, and then they brought it to Twitter. They made a Twitter account just to troll me, and they were going under my Twitter posts and saying the same sort of things, and kind of insinuated that they were with the content creator that I had issues with. So thought it was over until a few days ago, which is it's anxiety inducing to kind of have that constant thing on your back where it's like, you know, they might come back and, you know, eat at me a little more.
It is anxiety inducing, and it's something that I've really struggled with because I think about, like, so we got the Snyder Cut coming up, and I could review it, and it would probably do pretty well on my channel, but it's hard for me to, like, I wouldn't really make a profit on it, and so I'd basically be doing it for free, even though it would give me more listeners. But it's just like, do I want to expose myself to that kind of thing again for no real profit? Like, do I want to go through that again? I don't know. I'm having a hard time building up and at least I feel like I have an out on that because I don't normally review rated R content on my channel. So I feel like if I don't want to, I don't have to. But it's just hard to sort of build up I don't know, I'm having a hard time building up my confidence, I guess, to do it, because you just, going through that again was really hard. But Rosa, so you also had, it was so bizarre. Basically, this guy, he got mad at you for celebrating Latin films, Latinx films, and
Yeah.
what on earth? It was so weird.
Yeah, so there's this thing going on about the term itself, Latinx, and
Mm-hmm.
how a lot of people don't accept it and they don't embrace it, and how it like breaks a lot of the Spanish rules of the language, and so on and so forth. So yes, I've been constantly, because of course of the name of the podcast, Latinx Lens, I've been constantly told, stop using that word, blah 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 blah. We don't accept it, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, not that long ago, I also had a little backlash, not backlash, but I had a little incident with my hillbilly allergy review. I gave it like a lukewarm positive review, and wow, the feedback was quite bad in terms of that. But going back to the Latinx lens, the Latinx thing, I think that are spending, and when I say we, I mean Latinos, we're spending so much time just debating back and forth about whether the term is the right term, or whether you want to identify it as your own, or embrace it, or anything, that we're there's other important things to focus on. And eventually I told this person, you know what, it's just a term, it's a self-proclaimed term. If you want to identify as such, go for it. If you don't, just don't.
Yeah.
Just don't. It's completely up to you, however you want to identify yourself as. And if the word bothers you that much, then just don't listen to the podcast, don't follow me, and that's fine. I'll,
Mm-hmm.
I'll survive. Don't worry, I'll be fine.
Yeah, that's what I
um
always think. Like, if you don't like my content, then
yeah.
you don't have to. There's
There's
plenty of
other
other people.
creators, yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly.
I
There's
had a
a lot
while
of other
back,
people out there.
I had made a comment on my Twitter about how I hate the whole thing of like men commenting on girly stuff, and it's so frustrating because it always does so well. I was just like, oh, because
Yeah.
it's such bogus content. I hate it. And I just made the comment. I didn't, and I shared a photo of the channel that I didn't like, and I didn't tag them. I didn't say their name. I just showed the photo of the thumbnail. So that's what they're putting out there to the world. They're putting the thumbnail out there, right? And so I was just stating my opinion. This was not content that I liked. And somehow it got picked up and it went crazy. And everybody was retweeting this, and for the most part, everybody agreed with me. But then, like, again, his defenders came and they were like, "You're shaming him," and something. I'm like, "No, I'm not. I literally did not mention him. I didn't tag him. I just stated my opinion. They can go forward making their money and making their videos. They're obviously more successful than I am. So go for it. Keep doing what you're doing. It's just not for me."
Yeah.
And I think that that's sometimes something that people just struggle with, is they can't handle the fact that like somebody might have a different opinion, even a strong opinion on other people's content, on other people's movies, on other people's, and so I don't know, it can just be really, really frustrating when you just get pummeled by on this social media thing. And it can be such a positive thing. For the most part, I think it is very positive for me, but man, those when you get trolled, it's pretty tough. And I was thinking particularly, Rosa, about that one guy on Twitter who was like, this is against everything that I believe in, or whatever, and that he trolled you pretty hard, and then we all kind of came to your defense. Do you remember that?
Oh, was it the female directing, or
Uh,
I was
was it?
probably advocating for it was the
Yeah,
yeah, I don't want to say his name. But yes, yes. So we were advocating, or I was. I'm over here I was advocating for more female representation, particularly in
yeah.
directing. Um
And he was like, "This is something I always
yeah, it's
fight
like
against."
tokenism or something like that. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah,
Jesus.
so he said that directors shouldn't be hired just because they're women. They shouldn't be given opportunities because they're women, that they should earn it pretty much. And again, I'm not advocating for, yes, Hollywood, give women these jobs. I'm just simply saying give them the interview, give anybody else the interview, give them equal opportunities to go up there to showcase their talents, because we they can do it. Women can direct films, as we can see this year alone.
Mhm.
And yeah, he was pretty harsh on it, and he told me that, yeah, women, and yeah, and it was also, I was also talking about Latinos and how we should be
Yeah.
also given more opportunities to do more characters and so on. And yeah, he said, well, it's just tokenism, and you're just advocating for people to get jobs just because of their skin color or of their gender, when what matters here is the story. What matters here is to
Well,
make
and he was
sure
claiming
these.
that the
Uh-huh.
best talent always rises to the top. So if they're
Exactly,
talented,
yes.
then they will get the jobs. But what they don't
Yeah.
understand is basically you have a whole bunch of people all with the same qualifications. Let's be honest.
Right, right.
In any field, not even just in movies, in any field. You have a whole bunch of people who have all the same qualifications. Who are the easiest persons for you to cast, to hire, to whatever? The easiest people for you to choose are the people that you know, right?
Mhm.
And so if you've only worked with men, those are the people that you know, those are the people that you're going to hire. And it doesn't mean that they're not qualified and that they won't do a good job, because we all, a bunch of people all basically have about the same qualifications, right?
Mhm.
And I was talking to a sound editor, a pretty famous sound editor named Mitch Costin last year. I guess it was 2019 now. She made a documentary about sound editing. And I asked her because for a long time, the world of sound editing and stuff and sound was all pretty male. And I asked her if that was improving, what she thought. And this is what she said. She says, that hasn't changed that much. I used to think it was nefarious before I got into the business, but that's not what happens. In reality, you work long days, and sometimes it's easier to pick people they feel more comfortable with or have experience with.
Right.
So you have to have more of a consciousness about it. So when we're advocating for more women to be involved, whether it's film criticism, whether it's acting, directing, whatever it might be in any field, it takes a consciousness, because that's not the people that are probably the easiest to find and hire that have those skills.
Right.
But we need their voices, we need their input in all fields. And so the more that, just like we were talking about, that female criticism adds something to the world of criticism, same thing with any of these other fields. So you have to have a consciousness about it. You have to really be thinking about it. And so if we just pretend like, oh, well, the best person is going to get the job, that's just not reality. That's not playing by the actual, by how things are actually done. I don't know, Hannah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's like a lot of people seem to don't understand that like it's the representation that a lot of us really do like care about, especially with people who are like, oh well, it's not about it has to be the people who earned it. And I had this conversation a lot when Todd Phillips was nominated for director at the Oscars. Because I, out of the nominees that was there, he was the one that stuck out to me, that seemed like he brought the least amount of his own unique voice to his film, and it seemed like he was just there to, you know, fill a spot. And there were so many films released in 2019 directed by women that were just fantastic, and a lot of people brought up, well, he earned it, he had, you know, a better film than them. And I'm like, well, that's your opinion. That's, you know, to me, I think that Honey Boy is better than Joker, right? I would have put her in instead of Todd Phillips. So it's like, we're gonna have
Lulu
different
Wong too.
yeah, we're gonna
Yes, the
have different
farewell.
perspectives. And a lot of people who do bring up that kind of, oh, it's tokenism or like stuff like that, don't really understand that they're not the only voice that matters a lot of the time. So it's
Yeah.
frustrating, especially when you have those conversations where like, oh well, you know, it was a guy made a better film than a girl, and it's like, well, that's your opinion on it, I see it another way.
Yeah.
So
And Midge, she also said in this interview that I gave with her, she said, "Of course, you have incredible female sound designers, but what still happens a lot is will have women put in charge of projects deemed women's sounds or children's sounds, which is really kind of silly." And that is so true. And that's still something that we're, fighting. I mean, I work every day in what would be considered sort of women's entertainment, I guess, as far as Hallmark is typically viewed as a female uh, geared company, and I'm very proud of all that they do to give women opportunities to produce, to direct, to write. That I think that they do some great things, but you can't have you have to have that as an option, as a really great thing, as an awesome thing, but it can't be the only option. It can't be the woman's space, right, that they're allowed to kind of talk about and work in. It's a problem.
Yeah, and I think we need to overall as a society like begin or at least attempt to deprogram the social norms from our brain, because of course you're just gonna, if you're gonna hire women, yes, you're gonna probably put them in hair and production design or makeup
Mm-hmm.
or costume or something so that meets, I guess, society's norms of what women are capable of doing. And I think the documentary, the half of it, which highlights the lack of representation and everything of female directors in Hollywood, because they are vastly represented in the independent world, but Hollywood is the one that just that gatekeeping that's just keeping them away. And I think it breaks it down perfectly
Mm-hmm.
as to why. And a lot has to do by that a lot of people don't think of women as directors. They
Mm-hmm.
don't look at us as having the potential or being capable of doing any of it. And I think it's time we start just
Well,
slowly deprogramming that
yeah.
notion.
And I also I get frustrated when I feel like anything that is sort of made with women in mind is somehow viewed as kind of silly or stupid or frustrating.
Or
And
pushing an agenda.
yeah, or yeah, or an
Yeah.
agenda, definitely.
Yeah.
And that's not that that doesn't ever happen. It does happen, but it's a frustrating when it seems like everything is viewed in those lenses, and that that a movie has to be practically perfect in order to win the sort of the praise of a certain degree of the internet, at least.
Yeah.
In that if there's any flaws and it's a female geared product, it's really treated bad. It's really, really treated bad.
Yeah.
So I know it's an interesting thing. Well, we like to, on this podcast, we've talked a little bit here about unpopular opinions that
Mhm.
we've had. But Rosa, what's one review that you've done, either on your show or whatever, that you had an unpopular opinion on? You said one earlier.
Yeah, hillbillyology. I think that one is got me a lot of heat,
Mm-hmm.
just for giving it a lukewarm positive review. Yeah,
How dare you?
right. I'm sorry. Oh my God, the things I was called for that review, and it, in a way though, I awkwardly appreciated that happened because I learned so much from that incident.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a whole lot. But yeah, I just by the review, I was immediately boxed into a political party. I was named a particular supporter of the president that was in charge last term, because I gave it a lukewarm positive review.
Yeah. Well,
And
in
I was ridiculous.
That's really interesting because I had the flip experience because
Yeah.
I'm not a supporter of the president, President Trump, but I am more of a conservative
Okay.
in some of my views,
Hmm.
and so I put out my review because I did not like Hillbilly LG at
Oh.
all. It was not for me.
Yeah.
And I tried to explain myself as well as I could, that things I didn't like about it, and I got all of these comments in my review about, oh, you're just a liberal, you're you're just a
Wow.
feminist liberal. I'm like, no, I'm
Yeah.
not. not at all.
Yeah, no, I was called a traitor because I'm a Latina and I'm a Trump supporter according to them. And there's this rhetoric, I guess, that
Yeah.
Cubans are the ones that are the Trump supporters. So I was being called a Cuban apparently. So yeah, it was just ridiculous to just come up with the notion and
Oh my
just
gosh.
automatically think that I'm a particular political party or just have an agenda per se just because I gave it a lukewarm. And my
Mhm.
only positive aspect of it was the character of Amy Adams, because I
Mhm.
personally have had issues with drug addiction. So to see that depicted in the film that's kind of similar to my experience was something that it struck a chord with me, and apparently that makes me a Trump supporter.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
funny. Anna, what about you? What's an unpopular opinion that you had?
I have two that come to mind.
Mhm.
I last in 2019, I was like the biggest champion of It Chapter 2 and Far From Home on film Twitter, and a lot of people just it did not sit with them well. It's like I could talk about like whatever I liked in the film and still be like, hey, I understand why people don't like these movies, completely understand why. I see the issues that you see too, but they just don't bother me like they do you.
Yeah.
And people just couldn't understand that we had a different perspective, and I was brought on to a lot of podcasts to kind of talk about both of these films, because I was, like I said, one of the biggest like champions of them. And it seemed like every time I'd get on, they'd all disliked it, and then I'd be the one to be like, well, I loved it.
Yeah.
And I'd have to like kind of uh, debate everyone as to why I love it and them not liking it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
There were a couple like that for me. I really loved Toy Story 4, and a lot of people were kind of
Mm.
didn't like that. I thought it was great. I really loved Mary Poppins Returns, and a lot of
Mm.
people didn't like that. And I normally don't love the live action remakes, but I'm not. I don't have some kind of preset agenda of disliking them. And so every once in a while, one will come out that I actually like, and so
Yeah, I like
I
The
say that
Lion
I like
King,
it.
the new Lion
Oh, you
King
did?
movie, and I had a lot of people upset at me about that. And it's like, I'm sorry, like I don't go in with my mind made up. I watch
Yeah.
the movie, and if it affects me, then it affects me. I can't like help
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I mean, I also famously gave fresh to cats, which is very rare. But I think Dwayne, he likes cats, right?
No.
No, it was one
No.
of them on that podcast, I swear. One of Larry's friends. I was thinking it was him. Really likes it, but I didn't really like it. It was kind of a mess, but I don't know. I'm just a musical person. I love musicals and I had fun with it. It was weird. It was different. I enjoyed it. And
Yeah.
but it was exactly what I thought it was going to be. Because I've seen the show, and so I mean, come on. Um, but I really did love Mary Poppins Returns. I just thought it had such heart, and I loved the dancing and the music and Emily Blunt and as Mary Poppins and Dick Van Dyke, and I don't know, I loved it. I thought it was great, and and I feel like a lot of people have kind of come around on that movie,
I've seen
and
a lot more people positive
yeah.
on it than I did when it originally came
Mm-hmm.
out.
I think so too. And another big one that I had an unpopular opinion on was I did not like Birdman. Even to this day, I still don't like Birdman. I haven't rewatched it, but don't nor do
Yeah.
I want to. But I did not care for it at all. I thought it was just I hated all the female characters and how they were portrayed, and especially the critic at the end. I thought was just so groan worthy and so on the nose, and I just the ending I hated. It was not for me. And of course, it won Best Picture. So many people disagree with me. I did not like it. But I feel like a lot of people have kind of come around on that one as well. That now, when I kind of have that opinion, there's a lot more people that are like, yeah, we don't like it. So, anyway, it's an interesting experience. And a lot of people
Yeah.
think that we thrive off of these kinds of experiences, but at least for me, I actively hate them. I,
Me too.
I don't like to. It gives me anxiety. I mean, it's frustrating. And when I got out of Shazam, I knew it was going to be miserable. I knew I was going to have an unpopular opinion, and it was awful. And I didn't like it. And so I think I don't know. That's a misconception I feel like about a lot of critics, is that we like love giving these, or podcasters giving these negative hot takes or whatever.
It's not fun to be in the minority. It's really
No, it's
not.
not.
You like
It's
to
not.
be able to engage in like, conversations with everyone else who loved it. You like to be a part of that. It's a communal thing. That's why I love being in like the film community so much.
Yeah.
It's just, it sucks that people can't handle like differing opinions a lot of the time. I mean, I forgot to bring this up when you just asked me just now, but an unpopular opinion, but my favorite movie of all time is Call Me by Your Name. A lot of people have issues with the movie, and I understand why people have issues with the movie. And every single time on Twitter, someone like gets in with me about it, I say, I understand, I really do, but I just don't view it that way. And people just can't understand that a lot of the time. So I don't talk about it anymore. I don't even have it in my Letterboxd favorites because I'm so scared that people are just so vicious whenever I bring up that I, love the movie. And it's sad that, there is people in our community who take it, that seriously and personally when you don't like something, or you do like something that they dislike or they like,
Yeah, it is really sad. It's just a missed opportunity is what it is, that we can't have this chance to talk with each other
Yeah.
and to learn from each other's opinions. And so let's talk about a review, or an episode of a podcast or whatever that we're proud of, that we think was really good. What about you, Hannah? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the It Chapter 2 thing that I was talking about. I was on a lot of people's podcasts to talk about It Chapter 2 because I was the one person who didn't like it. Well, I did like it. I mean, and it creates a good conversation to have two people who had different opinions.
Yeah.
And every single review that I was on, I think that I just poured so much love into every single one of them because I love the movie so much. And I thought that I, expressed my feelings very well. And I don't think that, because there were a few times when I'd be the only one who liked it on the reviews, and there'd be more than one person who disliked it. So it would kind of feel like ganging up a little bit. And I like to think that I stood my ground and, didn't back down to anyone trying to tell me that, oh, you shouldn't like it for this reason, or, there's issues with it and stuff like that. And me still being like, no, I love the movie and I didn't see it that way. So yeah, I'm really proud of all of those podcasts that I were on to talk about that movie.
That's great, because every movie has problems. And so literally, and so what's the key is finding the movies that you forget about the problems,
Yeah.
right? And you enjoy. And so that's what people sometimes don't understand. Like, they'll point out the plot holes, and it's like, I know.
I explained that to
Good
so
job.
many people. I explained that to so many people with It Chapter 2 and Far From Home, especially Far From Home, because there is plot holes in that movie. And I'd be like, well, listen, there's parts of the movie that I just absolutely fell head over heels with. So it's like, I don't focus on those parts that you're complaining about, but I understand why that bothered you. But to me, I just don't see them because I'm too busy focusing on the parts that I loved so much, especially with It Chapter 2. And it's like, it's so hard to understand that other people don't understand that perspective.
Yeah. What about you, Rosa? What's something you've done in your content that you're really proud of?
Yeah, so it's related to the same film, but there was two instances. I did a podcast episode reviewing Promising Young Woman, and then for Twitter, I tried to do a thread of female critics reviewing the film. Because of course, after the Variety incident, and the critic who reviewed the film, and then he was talking about Carrie Mulligan's physical appearance, and how she wasn't hot enough for the movie. So I just decided, you know what, again, the male gaze comes to play. So let's have women, whether they like the film or not. Let's get the perspective of women, because at the end of the day, the movie is written, it's directed, and it's starring, and it's dealing and highlighting a lot of things that women experience. So yeah, I did a Twitter thread about female critics, and I just asked them to post their reviews, and luckily I did get a wide enough response, and there were several women that did come up and then just share their review, luckily. And yeah, I did a review episode for In Their Own League. It was me and three other female critics when we were praising the film. So it might become a little boring or repetitive, I guess, at some point, because there was nothing negative we can talk about the movie. We just love the film from to pieces, to from the music to the acting to everything about it. So yeah, I guess
Yeah.
it's that movie, and then yeah, the Twitter thread, and then that episode.
Well, in the variety review, it was so crazy to me because I'm thinking, did you watch the movie at all? Because that was like
Yeah.
all of what the movie was about
Yeah.
men not doing that.
Exactly.
Or the people on Twitter who deemed it the female Joker. That was a weird.
That was very weird.
Yeah. That was very weird.
Well, one for me that I really do love my Black Panther review. It's one of my favorites where I talk about the crisis of leadership and whose principles of leadership is correct, because they both have a perspective, and I really thought that was very well written. But another article that I wrote, this is way back in 2016, as an animation fan, I got really tired of every time the studios would pump out a terrible idea. People would say, well, the Lego movie was good and we didn't think that was going to be good.
I feel like you can say that with like every Lord and Miller movie, by the way.
Yeah. And so finally I wrote an article called The Lego Movie Excuse. And it's about how there were signs that there was a lot more potential in the Lego movie than just, oh, this movie about toys. If people took it like 30 seconds to actually like look at the team behind it, and also the amount of properties that were, the amount of IP included in Lego, so the amount of jokes and the amount of canon that they could find. Whereas, let's say something like Playmobil, it doesn't have all of that canon. It doesn't have Batman, Superman, Iron Man, everything that you can poke fun at. Harry Potter, there's just everything is in Legos, and so there's way more there to go off of. But every movie for so long was like, oh well, the Lego movie was good, and I'm like, stop. And,
Oh my god, that is so funny.
so that was something that I I just said, maybe it doesn't matter, but I'm a little sick of hearing the Lego movie excuse.
Yeah.
So now, so naturally Hollywood is going to try and give us a million copycats, and that's why we can't have nice things. But I think some healthy skepticism is a good thing. Make the studios earn our faith in projects, and then they will work harder to wow us.
Yes.
And please stop giving the Lego movie excuse. So that was a fun one. So yeah, for all of the bad sides, it really is a wonderful thing to be able to be a podcaster, to be a critic is a great privilege. And for the most part, even Twitter for the most part has been a great blessing in my life, especially during this last year where I just don't know how I would have survived like without it, because
me
it has
too.
just been so isolating and so lonely. And so to be able to have community, even if it has those toxic elements, has been a huge blessing. And I'm very grateful for that. And and I'm really grateful for both of you for coming and talking with us. And why don't you share your content and where people can find you? Or why don't you start, Rosa?
Yes, and Rachel, thank you. Thank you for the invite. I am one of your biggest fans, so this is truly an honor to be here. Yes, you can find me on every social media platform at Rosa's Reviews, and you can also find Latinx podcast over at any podcast platform, also social media at Latinx Lens, and in their own league as well. Podcast is their league, in their own league, and then we're also available on every social media platform at their league. And thank you.
Hannah, what about you?
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I said it in the beginning, but I love you both. So I was so excited to talk to you guys. But you can find me at Movies and Cats on Twitter. And then you can find my podcast, Cinemania World, at Cinemania World on everywhere. And then also I co-host a podcast called Robert Podcastin', and you can find that everywhere too on all streaming platforms. So
Yeah, that's good. I forgot to ask you about that.
I forgot to mention it in the beginning. It's a new podcast. It's a new podcast. So
that's great. That's great.
If you love Robert Pattinson.
Very good. That's great. So yeah, you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So please check all of that out. And also you can find me at the Hallmarkies Podcast, where we have interviews and lots of really great content over there. And so thanks again. And if you are interested, if you're a female film critic or blogger or YouTuber, and you would like to come on this series, please let me know, DM me, or put in the comments section. We'd love to expand even more beyond just the people that I happen to know. And now that we're keeping this up every month, so let me know if you're interested. I would love to hear from you. And please like this video. Please subscribe to the channel, and also consider becoming a patron. We really appreciate that so much. And we also have our merch store, which is really fun. So thank you very much, ladies. I really appreciate it. And we'll talk next month. Bye.